Back on January 23rd, Dragon's Dogma 2 director Hideaki Itsuno spoke with Games Radar and said, "You don't need fast travel in your game, you only need it because your game is boring." But it's starting to look like the reason they didn't want to put fast travel in the game in the first place was so they could sell it to you as a microtransaction. I'm Bobby here with Direct Gaming, and today we're going to talk to you about the Dragon's Dogma 2 situation, the extremely negative Steam reviews, and the really ludicrous amount of microtransactions, and whether or not you actually need them. But before we get started, if you're new here, hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy this content. We are trying to close in on 5,000 subscribers by the end of this year. If you do not enjoy this content, leave us a dislike and let us know what we can do better in the future in the comments section. So, Dragon's Dogma 2, one of the biggest releases of this year. Everybody's been looking forward to it, even though there have been rumors, and now it's confirmed that the performance is subpar on basically every system known to man that a consumer can get their hands on. But aside from that, one of the biggest things that's come up since the release has been the egregious amount of microtransactions that Capcom has slapped into this single-player game. Now, despite getting really glowing reviews basically across the board, the game's getting in the high 80s to the 90s, depending on the outlet. I believe the OpenCritic and Metacritic scores are in the 80s and 90s for all platforms that the game is released on. I was holding off personally because they did note the performance basically across every platform, and while I have a 4070, I don't have a 4090 and a Ryzen 7800 X3D so I can get 60 frames per second throughout the game. And I'm really thankful I did, because upon release it came out that Dragon's Dogma 2 has an absurd amount of microtransactions, including charging players in a single-player RPG to change the look of their character. Now, to me, this one is especially egregious because the look of your character is a really big deal for a RPG of any kind. You're supposed to project yourself onto the character, and you should be able to freely change that character, how they look, their at least physical, visual attributes at any time, in my opinion. But apparently Capcom is not of the same mind, because they decided that in Dragon's Dogma 2, a player is going to have to buy the Art of Metamorphosis Character Editor DLC for $1.99. Now that sounds really bad, having to pay $2 every time you want to change the appearance of your character in a single-player RPG. This is not an MMO or anything like that. This is a single-player game that Capcom developed and released, and they are asking players to cough up $2 to change their appearance. Now, here's the thing. You actually can, in the game, change your appearance for free. It just takes a certain amount of a certain currency. But here's the question, and this is a question that I want you to keep in mind as we go through the rest of the microtransactions that we talk about here today. During the development of this game, were developers encouraged to make these certain currencies harder to get in order to encourage player spending, because players do not want to waste time farming those currencies, and instead they're gently nudged to save time by making a microtransaction purchase. Now, bear with me here. If you're someone like me who I don't have a ton of time, I don't have time like I used to play games, especially the last few weeks I've been very busy. I've barely even been able to put 20 hours into Final Fantasy Rebirth. But if it's someone like me, who is making my money and what have you, I can go, oh man, I want to change how my character looks. Oh, I can go out and do 15 quests and get enough of the currency to change how my character looks, and then waste that instead of getting something else that might be useful. Or I can turn around and pay $2, which is, a fraction of my hourly rate that I make at work. And then I can have everything for just a couple bucks. And I write it off because it's just a couple bucks. It's not anything big, it's just a couple bucks. Well, that certainly seems to be the question that a lot of people on Steam are asking, and the argument that they're taking, because up until recently, and I mean within the last few hours it seems, this game was sitting at a mostly negative rating, under 40% on Steam. Right now, as I'm recording this video, with 19,620 user reviews, there are 44% positive review. And here's the thing you gotta know about Steam. Steam is actually one of the most honest places in terms of reviews that you're gonna find for the most part. If a game is good, it tends to do well on Steam. And if a game is bad, or if it's a good game that engages in really scummy practices like a ton of microtransactions, it tends to get absolutely review bombed, so that the developers know that Steam players as a whole do not think that this kind of delivery of a product is okay. Now, I also mentioned earlier that director Hideaki Itsuno did an interview with Games Radar where he talked about fast travel. And he said, hey, in Dragon's Dogma 2, we don't want the game to be boring. So what we're going to have is a series of ox carts right, littered throughout the map that can take you from one big area to another big area, so that you kind of have this journey that you're on, but you might get attacked on the way, and it's kind of a little cutscene that plays through, so that it's not as simple as just a conventional fast travel. And this actually sounds kind of good when you take it at face value, when you look and go, hey, that's actually kind of cool, it's engaging, instead of just being, a cutscene. It's a cutscene with this idea that, hey, I might get attacked, so I need to be on my toes even when I'm traveling, kind of doing the quasi fast travel that the aux carts are. But it feels really cynical reading this interview after seeing these microtransaction lists pop up and seeing that there is a fast travel beacon available for players to purchase. And again, it's only a couple bucks, but that brings us back to the question that I asked earlier. Were the developers encouraged to make the currencies where you can buy this fast travel thing in the game harder to get, to gently nudge players to engage in those microtransactions? Because that's certainly what it feels like here. A lot of stuff that Capcom does is like littered with microtransactions. They have them in just about every game now, but this is getting to a point where it's kind of ridiculous, especially considering this is a completely single player game. This is a big open epic RPG where a lot of things just are supposed to be happening naturally. It's supposed to feel like this flow, almost like Baldur's Gate, where like almost anything can happen. And I was actually really looking forward to this, and I thought maybe I'll get this after some performance patches. But right now, I'm feeling less and less inclined as a player who doesn't want to be like gently nudged towards those microtransactions to play this game. And it's the same reason I stopped playing things like Genshin Impact. Now, Genshin Impact is a gacha game, so it's a little more gambly than this. This is like, a game where they're just saying, hey, if you want this kind of convenience of not having to farm up things to buy a thing to edit your character, or not having to farm up things to get a fast travel warp point, there's always the cash shop. It's right there. Genshin's a little more egregious than that, selling power through characters and stuff, as gachas are known to do. But the point still stands that Capcom absolutely did not need to put this in the game, and it's definitely showing through the Steam reviews. But it's not just the Steam reviews, because now we're seeing the mainstream pick up on it. It's getting out there a little further, especially in gaming circles, right? One of the places that that gamers hang out is Twitter. And we've already seen some great responses to this, like Hard Drive putting out an article titled "The Ability to Review Dragon's Dogma 2 Now Hidden Behind Microtransactions." And even better, a PC Gamer article where they talk about how modders have already modded in the ability to get 99 copies of the change appearance item stacked in your inventory. And I want to be one of the first to publicly salute Silver Ezradiz from Nexus for making this mod and really kind of giving Capcom the finger on this one, because charging people for something that should be a basic service in your RPG is just silly, and it's just a cash grab full on. And I do want to point out, there have been a lot of people, like reviewers and YouTube personalities and things, that have said very openly, hey, I put in 40, 50, 60, 100 hours into Dragon's Dogma 2, and I never felt like I had to buy any of those microtransactions. They didn't really have any impact on my gameplay. They didn't have any effect on me. But here's the thing, someone with that amount of time and access, whose job it is to play games, review games, to kind of give their impressions or make YouTube videos about them, they're going to have time because that's their job. If you're someone who's out there working 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week, and you come home and you want to play the RPG, and you go, man, I wish I could just fast travel and get places faster, you're going to have to pay for it. Or you're going to have to just deal with wasting your time in the game. And that's what Capcom is banking on. They're banking on the regular players having that experience and it being something that you just end up breaking down and paying for just to save time because you're engaged in the game. Now, this is not to say anything about the quality of this game, right? Aside from performance issues, I've seen some videos that look amazing, and I've heard things from reviewers and things like that, read reviews that say this game is fantastic. And I do believe that it actually is fantastic. But with the temptation and the fact that you can save so much time by just breaking down and paying for certain things instead of going out and farming during the game when you may not have a lot of time, it feels like the working class individual is getting the short end of the stick here. And I don't think that's something that should be encouraged by players or people who might be purchasing them. If you are thinking about purchasing this game, I would hold off for the time being. Maybe they break down and go, hey, you know what? We heard the response to this. We're removing all these microtransactions. If they did that, I would absolutely think about buying the game. I would still want to see some performance improvements, but I could at least try it out and see how I like it. But as of right now, I don't really feel like giving them my money for a product that I feel like should have been a little more fair to the end consumer. But what do you think about all of these microtransactions in Dragon's Dogma 2? Do you think they're egregious like I do? Now, as a final point, I really want to say that like the new Monster Hunter game is coming out next year, and I really hope they don't do anything like this in that game, right? I know Monster Hunter's always going to have DLC, and the last one had like costumes and stuff, and that's all fine if it's like stuff like that. But if it's basic things that should be in the game, like fast travel, absolutely not. Let us know what you think in the comments section. Again, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're trying to close in on 5,000 subscribers by the end of this year. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Little Bobby here with Direct Gaming, and I hope to see you soon.